My name is Maya Chen. I'm 32 years old, an architect living in Portland, Maine. For the past 3 years, I've been paying my parents' mortgage. They never asked. I just did it because that's what good daughters do. Last month, they hosted their 30th wedding anniversary dinner at a fancy restaurant downtown. I wasn't invited. My mother said it was because of limited seating. She said they had to keep it intimate. I told myself it didn't matter. I was too busy anyway. But when I opened social media that evening, the lie fell apart.
My sister Chloe had posted a photo. Everyone smiling at a long table under golden lights, champagne glasses raised. The caption said, "Family only. We finally have everyone together." I stared at the screen, the words burning. Then I typed my comment. "Congratulations, the mortgage and property taxes are all yours now." I hit send before I could change my mind. 5 minutes later, the post disappeared. 10 more minutes and 30 missed calls blinked across my screen. I didn't answer.
I just sat there in my small apartment overlooking Congress Street, the glow from my phone lighting the dark room, realizing that maybe I'd been uninvited long before that dinner ever happened. They didn't forget me. They excluded me. If you've ever been treated like a stranger by your own family, keep watching. What happened next will make you rethink what love and loyalty truly mean. And when you finish this story, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place.
It had always been this way. Chloe was the sun, and I was the shadow that followed quietly behind. When we were children, she would draw messy pictures for Mother's Day, and my mother would frame them like masterpieces. I once brought home a regional award for a science fair project, but it was folded into a drawer before dinner. My mother said she didn't want me to brag. Even as a child, I learned that Chloe's smallest effort was worth celebration, while my best work was just expected. The pattern only deepened as we grew older. When the family car broke down, I was the one who wired money from my first real job. When my father's medical bills piled up, I sent another check, pretending I didn't notice the silence that followed instead of gratitude. Each time there was a crisis, my phone would light up, not for conversation, but for a transaction. I told myself I was helping because it was the right thing to do, but part of me hoped they would finally see my worth. They never did. Chloe's life unraveled before mine ever started to bloom. She married young, divorced young, and returned home with boxes of clothes and a bruised ego. My mother welcomed her like a returning hero. I remember hearing her say to a neighbor, "Chloe is doing her best, poor thing." When I visited that weekend, I offered to take Chloe out for dinner. She declined, saying she was too tired. That night, I overheard my mother telling my father that I didn't understand real struggle. I wanted to laugh. Paying off their bills wasn't struggle enough. Apparently, living in Portland gave me distance, but it also became proof of my supposed coldness. Every time I skipped a family dinner because of late meetings, my mother would sigh and tell relatives, "Maya's too busy for family now." I worked hard, earned every promotion, yet in their eyes, I was the daughter who drifted away. The truth was simpler. Being near them hurt. The closer I stood, the more invisible I felt. My father, David, was a quiet man. He rarely disagreed with my mother. When she criticized me, he would mutter, "You know how your mother is," as if that excused everything. Once, after a tense dinner, I asked him why he never spoke up. He looked at his plate and said, "Keeping the peace is easier than being right." I realized then that silence was his form of loyalty to her, not to me. The years passed, marked by phone calls that always began with small talk and ended with requests. "Can you help with the roof? Your sister needs a little extra cash." I gave, not because I was generous, but because I couldn't bear the guilt of saying no. It wasn't until recently that I noticed a pattern. They only called when something was broken. When everything was fine, I disappeared from their world entirely. Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll through old family photos on my phone, Chloe's arm always around my mother, my father always standing beside them, and me just off to the side, half cropped out of the frame. It wasn't intentional, I told myself, but deep down, I knew it mirrored real life. There was no malice, only habit. I had become background, the reliable one, the invisible one. People say family is unconditional. Mine came with terms, interest rates, and unspoken debts. I was the safety net beneath their lives, stretched thin but never acknowledged. For a long time, I convinced myself that love meant sacrifice. Only now, I'm beginning to wonder if it was simply convenience for them. 1 week before the anniversary party, my mother called. Her voice was sweet in that overly careful way that always meant something unpleasant was coming. She said she hoped I was doing well, that work must be keeping me busy, and that she and my father were finalizing the seating arrangements for their dinner, with cousins and old friends confirming at the last minute. She said she hoped I would understand that it wasn't personal, that she loved me very much. I sat at my desk listening to her voice echo through the speakerphone, half distracted by the hum of my computer. The words didn't hurt right away. They just sat there, heavy, waiting for meaning to catch up. I told her it was fine, that she should enjoy the night. She sounded relieved, almost cheerful when she said goodbye. An hour later, a message from Chloe lit up my phone. "Don't take it personally," she wrote, followed by a smiling emoji. I stared at it longer than I should have. Chloe always had a way of turning sympathy into superiority. The text wasn't comfort, it was confirmation. I had been excluded, and she knew it. I typed a reply and erased it 3 times before finally leaving it blank. That evening at the office, my colleague Jenna noticed my silence. She was the kind of coworker who never asked unnecessary questions, but always knew when something was off. We had shared the same workspace for 2 years, and in that time, she had learned how to read my moods. She asked if I wanted to grab coffee before heading home. I agreed, mostly to avoid thinking. At the cafe near the corner, she waited until I spoke first. I told her about my mother's call, about the limited seating, about Chloe's message. Jenna stirred her drink slowly, her eyes calm but sharp. "They only love the version of you that pays the bills," she said finally. The sentence landed like a pin drop in the quiet air. I almost laughed because it sounded cruel, but also because it was true. Jenna didn't say it to be harsh. She said it because she saw what I refused to admit. I told her I had always been the one who sent money whenever something went wrong, that my parents called only when there was a problem to fix. She nodded, as if she'd already guessed. Then she said, "Stop fixing everything." I wanted to tell her it wasn't that simple, that families don't just break cleanly. But the truth was, I didn't know how to stop. When we left the cafe, the air outside felt colder than it should have been. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement, and for a moment I imagined my mother and Chloe sitting together somewhere warm, deciding where to place everyone for the dinner. I wondered if there had ever been a time when my presence felt necessary instead of inconvenient. That night, I went online and ordered a gift for them. It wasn't expensive, just a small silver photo frame engraved with 30 years of love. I thought it might bridge the distance, even a little. I wrapped it carefully, wrote a short card, and mailed it the next morning. 3 days later, a box appeared on my doorstep. The return label was in my mother's handwriting. Inside was the same photo frame, untouched, with a note that said, "We already have too much." I stood there in the hallway holding the box, not sure whether to feel angry or embarrassed. The words were polite, but the message was clear. My efforts were unnecessary, just like my presence at their party. That evening, Chloe called, her voice bright with the kind of false concern that always made my stomach tighten. She said our mother hadn't meant to hurt my feelings, that it was just a misunderstanding, that I should try not to be so sensitive. I told her I wasn't upset, though my throat felt tight. Before hanging up, she said, "You know how Mom gets when she's planning something big." I knew exactly how my mother got, but what hurt more was realizing Chloe always defended her, even when she knew it was wrong. After the call, I sat by the window, watching the rain begin to fall. The city was quiet, and my reflection looked tired. I thought about what Jenna had said, that maybe they only loved the version of me that provided, that stayed silent, that didn't ask for space at the table. For the first time, I wondered if love built on obligation was love at all. I didn't cry. I just felt a strange calm, the kind that comes after giving up on expecting more. I unplugged my phone and went to bed early, deciding there was nothing left to say. The next week would come, the dinner would happen, and I would not be part of it. What surprised me most was how little that thought hurt anymore. Saturday night came. I had just finished cleaning my apartment, trying to distract myself from the thought of the anniversary dinner happening across town. I wasn't expecting anything, yet the moment I opened social media, there it was, Chloe's update sitting at the top of my screen, as if waiting for me. The picture loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, before it revealed everyone standing together in front of the restaurant. They were dressed in coordinated outfits, smiling as if the night were a perfect portrait of love. At the center stood my mother and father, their hands intertwined, surrounded by relatives, friends, and even neighbors I barely recognized. The caption read, "Family only. We finally have everyone together." My thumb hovered over the screen. For a second, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she had posted it without realizing how cruel it looked. But then I saw the comments below. My mother's name appeared first. "Couldn't be prouder." Her words sat there like a stamp of approval on my exclusion. Dozens of heart emojis followed from family friends. Messages praising how beautiful everyone looked, how strong and close the Chens were. Each comment was another quiet cut. I read the caption again and again as if repetition would change the meaning. It didn't. The more I stared, the colder I felt. The white clothes, the glowing smiles, the polished setting. They weren't just for celebration, they were for performance. My family didn't want honesty. They wanted image. They wanted to look united, even if unity meant pretending I didn't exist. My eyes blurred slightly, but I refused to cry. Instead, I scrolled back up, pressed the comment box, and typed, "Congratulations! The mortgage and property taxes are all yours now." It wasn't loud, it wasn't vulgar, but it was true. For 3 years, I had been the one making sure that house existed. Every check, every transfer, every quiet sacrifice came from me. That photo wouldn't even be possible without those payments. I hit post and watched the words settle beneath Chloe's perfect caption. Then I locked my phone and set it aside. 15 minutes passed before I picked it up again. The post was gone. My notification bar blinked nonstop with messages and missed calls. The numbers climbed fast, 10, 20, 30. My mother's name appeared the most. I didn't answer. I just sat there staring at the phone, vibrating on the table, feeling the weight of every buzz. When it finally stopped, a message came through. "How could you embarrass us like that? You're being selfish." I put the phone face down and leaned back, letting the silence settle. The word selfish repeated in my head until it almost became meaningless. I had been called many things in my life. Cold, distant, too focused, but selfish was a new invention. My chest tightened, not from guilt, but from disbelief. After everything I had done, after every bill I had covered, every late payment I'd fixed, they still managed to paint me as the villain. I stood by the window, looking out at the street below. The rain had started again, quiet and persistent. Somewhere across town, they were still probably laughing, maybe already home from the dinner, full and satisfied. I made tea just to have something to do with my hands. The kettle hissed, filling the small apartment with steam. I thought about the past 3 years, about every time I logged into my bank account to transfer the mortgage payment, telling myself it was temporary, that one day things would be different. I never questioned why I was doing it. Family needed help, and that was what good daughters did. I didn't even put my name on the deed. I told myself I didn't need credit. Standing there, it hit me all at once. I wasn't just excluded from their table. I had been excluded from their gratitude long ago. They didn't see me as a person anymore, just a resource. And that post, that perfect photo, was proof. They could erase me from their picture, but not from the bills that kept their lives stable. The phone rang again. I let it ring. I knew if I picked up, my mother would speak first, her tone dripping with disappointment instead of remorse. She would tell me that family shouldn't air dirty laundry online, that appearances mattered more than feelings, and she would never realize the irony. I had been keeping their appearances intact for years. Eventually, the call stopped. The apartment grew quiet again, except for the low hum of the heater. I sat on the couch, tea cooling in my hand, and thought of Jenna's voice in the cafe. They only love the version of you that pays the bills. It wasn't just a clever observation, it was prophecy. I took one last look at my phone before turning it off completely. The light faded from the screen, and for the first time that night, the quiet felt peaceful. Somewhere deep inside, under the hurt, something shifted. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was awakening. I didn't know yet. All I knew was that I was done being the invisible sponsor of their perfect image. 2 weeks passed and silence got expensive. I had stopped sending the mortgage payments the same day I decided to stop explaining myself. For 3 years, my account had released the same amount every month like clockwork, without thanks or acknowledgement. The moment I cut that flow, the quiet that followed was heavier than I imagined. The first week was still. The second began to hum with consequence. On Tuesday morning, my phone lit up with a message from my mother. "The bank keeps calling. They said something about missed payments. Is everything all right?" It was written with feigned confusion, the kind that hides accusation beneath politeness. I read it twice and didn't answer. A few hours later, she sent another. "We didn't want to bother you, but they say it's urgent." The word urgent was her favorite way to manipulate guilt. I could almost hear her sigh between the lines, the practiced tone of a mother who believed love meant control. By Friday, Chloe joined in. Her post appeared on social media, public for everyone to see.
"Some people forget who raised them," it read, paired with a photo of her holding our mother's hand. The comments were predictable: sympathy, validation, concern. "Stay strong," someone wrote. "Family can hurt the most," another said. Chloe replied to each one with heart emojis and crying faces, playing the role she had perfected: devoted daughter, loyal sister, victim of someone else's coldness. I scrolled through the thread once, closed the app, and let my phone fall onto the couch. I refused to give them the satisfaction of a response.
But ignoring them didn't stop reality from catching up. 3 days later, an envelope from the bank arrived in my mailbox. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I hadn't lived in that house for years, and all financial ties were supposed to be clean, except the payments I chose to send. The envelope felt heavy, its paper thick and official. I tore it open and scanned the first page. My name was printed in bold letters across the top: Maya Chen, borrower and guarantor. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The letter wasn't about late payments. It was about a new refinance. The numbers were unfamiliar, larger, riskier. The house had been refinanced under my name 2 months earlier. I reread the page, searching for an error, a misprint, anything. But every signature line, every identifier was mine. The next morning, I called the bank. After being transferred through 3 departments, a calm voice introduced himself as Marcus Webb, the account manager. "Ms. Chin," he said, "I see your inquiry regarding the refinance. How can I assist?" I asked him to verify the details. He hesitated, then said, "The refinance was processed in July." The primary borrowers listed are David and Linda Chen, with your signature authorizing the guarantee. My pulse quickened. "I never signed anything," I said. "Can you send me the documents?" There was a pause before he answered. "We have electronic copies on file. The signature matches prior authorizations. It appears consistent." The word consistent struck like a blade. Someone had used my digital signature, my saved authorization data from prior transactions. I pressed further, asking for timestamps, IP addresses, confirmation of the signing method. Marcus grew cautious. "Legally, I can provide that through a formal request, but if you're suggesting fraud, we can initiate an internal review." The room seemed smaller as he spoke. The air felt sharp. I thanked him, wrote down his name, and ended the call. Then I sat still, staring at the bank statement spread across my desk. My parents hadn't just leaned on my help. They had crossed into theft, using the very trust I had built with them as the weapon. The messages from my mother continued. "Honey, we need to talk." Then, "You're being unreasonable." Finally, "You're tearing this family apart." I didn't respond to any. Each message was proof of how their love had conditions attached. It was never about care, only compliance. That night, I found myself scrolling through old emails. There it was, an automated message from the bank, 2 months old, labeled refinance confirmation. I had ignored it back then, assuming it was spam. The attached PDF now told the full story. The form was digitally signed under my name using the email and access credentials tied to the joint account I had once shared with my father for payment transfers. I had left that access open, trusting they wouldn't misuse it. That trust had become their entry point. I printed every document, highlighted every date, every code, every name. The paper stack grew thick, each page proof of betrayal. When I reached the final one, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from clarity. There was no misunderstanding left to fix. They hadn't stumbled into this mistake. They had planned it. The refinance required 2 verifications, both cleared within 10 minutes of each other. Someone in that house knew exactly what they were doing. Later, as I stared out at the rain-soaked street, I realized how quiet betrayal sounds when it stops being emotional and starts becoming evidence. For years, I had been their safety net. Now, I was their collateral. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began drafting an email. Not to my mother, not to Chloe, but to Marcus Webb at the bank. The subject line read, "Formal dispute of fraudulent authorization." My hands no longer shook. My breathing slowed. Each word I typed was measured, deliberate, precise. I attached the evidence and requested an immediate freeze on the account. When I hit send, the silence returned, but this time it didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. I wasn't frozen anymore. They were. By late October, the truth had interest. The chill in the air matched the sharpness that had taken root inside me. I met with Sarah Chen, a real estate attorney known for her precision and patience. Her office was lined with case files, shelves full of quiet victories. She read through my documents silently, her eyes narrowing only once when she reached the refinance agreement. Then she leaned back in her chair and looked at me steadily. "Miss Chen," she said, "this is textbook forgery. The electronic authorization was reused without consent. Whoever accessed your credentials committed fraud." Her words didn't surprise me, but hearing them spoken aloud made something inside settle. It was no longer a suspicion or betrayal I carried alone. It was a legal fact. Sarah explained the next steps carefully, outlining how we could report the incident, freeze the account, and initiate a civil complaint. I nodded through most of it, feeling a strange calm, like standing in a storm after realizing you cannot get wetter. When I left her office, the folder in my hand felt heavier than before. Not because of the paper, but because of the clarity it contained. That afternoon, I received an email from Marcus, the bank manager who had helped me gather evidence. Attached were detailed transaction logs, timestamps, and system records, all pointing to my parents' account activity during the refinance. "I hope this helps you, Miss Chen," he wrote. "I'm sorry this happened." I thanked him, though no apology could fix the truth. My family had turned my trust into collateral. 3 days later, Chloe's name appeared on my phone. Her message was short. "Mom wants to have brunch, just us. It's time to talk." I almost deleted it, but something in me wanted closure, not reconciliation. I replied, "Where and when?" Sunday morning, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. The place smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso, the kind of comfort that didn't sip the tension brewing in my chest. I chose a table by the window, placed the folder beside my cup, and waited. A few minutes later, Chloe walked in, followed by our parents. My mother was dressed perfectly, as if appearance could rewrite the truth. My father's shoulders were heavy, his eyes fixed on the floor. Chloe began with a smile too bright to be real, rehearsed, her charm shield. My mother nodded in agreement, stirring her coffee with practiced grace. "We all made mistakes," she said, "but we're family. We can fix this." I looked at her and then at the folder. "Fix?" I said quietly. "You used my name for a loan. You forged my signature." The words fell like glass on tile. Chloe froze. My mother's hand trembled slightly. "My father didn't move at all." "That's not true," Chloe said quickly, eyes darting to our mother. "You must be mistaken. Maybe the bank." I opened the folder and slid a printed page across the table. My name sat above the digital signature, time-stamped, verified. "The bank didn't do this," I said. "You did." My mother's lips parted, but no words came out. Her face lost its practiced calm. My father's silence became louder than any confession. I could almost hear the hum of the coffee machine behind us filling the void. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. "You want to talk about mistakes?" I pressed play on an old voicemail, one my mother had left weeks earlier. Her voice filled the small space, sharp and pleading. "The bank keeps calling, Maya. We need your help. You know we can't lose the house. You'll take care of it, right?" The color drained from her face. Chloe's expression hardened, as if anger could undo proof. "You didn't have to go this far," she said through clenched teeth. I met her gaze steadily. "You didn't have to steal from me." My mother finally whispered, "We only did it to keep everything together for the family." I gathered the papers back into the folder. "Then keep it together without me." I stood, placed cash on the table for my coffee, and added softly, "I've already filed to remove my name from the loan and end all support. The bank and the court will handle the rest." None of them spoke. The sound of spoons tapping against ceramic filled the silence. I felt no triumph, only release. The weight that had pressed on my chest for months lifted as I turned toward the door. Outside, the October air bit at my skin, crisp and cold, but it felt clean. Behind me, the cafe windows reflected their figures, still seated, still small. Ahead, the street stretched open, quiet, waiting. For the first time in years, I walked without looking back. 3 months later, the house went quiet. The street that once echoed with my mother's morning gardening and my father's cautious footsteps now held only the sound of winter wind against the shutters. The "for sale" sign that once marked their pride now carried a red sticker that said "bank owned." I passed by it once on my way to drop off paperwork at the county office. The sight felt strange, like staring at a ghost of something I used to protect. The foreclosure had moved quickly. Without my payments and with the fraud case under review, the mortgage defaulted within weeks. The bank repossessed the property before Christmas. The furniture went into storage. The garden wilted. The front porch lights never came on again. The neighbors whispered, of course. Families like mine were supposed to be respectable, not on the local foreclosure list. Chloe moved out first. I heard from Marcus that she had been staying with a friend across town. Sleeping on a pull-out couch in a cramped apartment. The same girl who once posted photos of family unity now deleted every trace of those smiles. Her social media went silent. When the bank's legal department contacted her for a deposition, she refused to respond. That silence didn't last long. A month later, the district attorney's office filed a civil complaint against her for falsifying financial documents during the refinance. Sarah, my attorney, forwarded the notice to me without comment. She didn't need to say anything. The consequences had finally found their way home.
My mother, on the other hand, found someone new to blame. She called once, long after the house was gone, her voice a brittle whisper. "You didn't have to destroy us," she said. "You could have helped." I didn't reply. There were too many layers of irony in that statement to peel back. She never mentioned the forged documents or the lies that led there. To her, I was still the ungrateful daughter who wouldn't obey. My father remained silent as always. I wondered if he agreed with her, or if silence was simply his way of surviving. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. The family I once tried to save had already collapsed long before the bank took the house. The first week of February, I moved into a new apartment in Burlington, Vermont. It was small, but filled with light, with windows overlooking a narrow parkway where children walked home from school every afternoon. I bought second-hand furniture, assembled it myself, and for the first time in years, every object in the room belonged solely to me. There was no mortgage notice, no debt collector, no voice demanding explanations, just quiet. Each morning I brewed coffee and watched the snow fall over the city. Sometimes I thought about Chloe and wondered whether she blamed me or finally saw the truth. Other times I thought about my mother's garden, how she used to say, "You can't grow anything in the cold." She was wrong. Some things grow best in the cold. Clarity, boundaries, self-respect. When the final court decision arrived, it confirmed what Sarah had promised months ago. My name was officially removed from the fraudulent loan, and the liability was reassigned to the original borrowers. The judge noted the deliberate misuse of personal authorization, citing intentional misrepresentation. Reading those words, I felt no satisfaction, only closure. It was the clean ending I had needed but never thought I'd get. Marcus sent a short email that same afternoon. "The case is closed. I wish you the best moving forward." I replied with 2 words, "Thank you." There was nothing else to say. He had been professional, kind, and honest, qualities that now felt rare in my vocabulary of family. At night, the quiet of the apartment grew deep, but not lonely. I learned to enjoy the rhythm of my own company. I cooked dinner for one, read books without distraction. Sometimes I let music fill the space. The stillness that once frightened me now became the proof of survival. I no longer waited for apologies, explanations, or redemption. Some stories didn't end with reconciliation. Some simply ended. One evening, I found an old photograph tucked in my drawer, a family portrait from years ago, all of us standing in front of that same house before it turned into a headline. We looked happy then, maybe because we believed we were. I stared at the image for a long time before slipping it back into the envelope. The past could stay archived. I had no use for it anymore. Life in Burlington wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I paid my rent, my bills, and slept without checking my phone for emergency messages. I no longer measured my worth in sacrifice. My peace didn't need witnesses, likes, or approval. It only needed space to exist. On my last night before spring, I stood by the window and watched the city lights blur against the falling snow.
It wasn't the life I planned, but it was a life I chose. And as I turned off the lights and walked toward my quiet room, one thought settled clearly in my mind. Peace was the most expensive thing I ever bought, and it was worth every penny. If my story resonates with you, drop a comment below. Tell me your moments of choosing yourself. Share if you've ever had to walk away from those who didn't believe in you. This isn't just my story. It's for anyone who's been underestimated, dismissed, or quietly pushed aside. I didn't share this for pity or praise. I shared it because we're often told to shrink ourselves to keep others comfortable. Because ambition is labeled defiance instead of growth. My advice? Don't wait for permission to become who you're meant to be. Choose yourself, even when no one else does. For those still in the fight, keep going. The loneliness won't last forever. Your work matters. You matter. One day, when those who doubted you finally see what you've built, you won't need their validation. You'll already have your own. My name is Maya Chen. I'm an architect. I'm a survivor. And I still have that silver photo frame they sent back. It sits on my bookshelf now, a reminder that some gifts aren't meant to be given, they're meant to be kept. Thanks for listening. And remember, you don't need their approval. You never did. If you're ready to support stories like mine and others who've turned pain into power, hit that subscribe button. Let's keep telling stories that matter. And if you're harboring dreams you haven't spoken aloud yet, let this be your sign. You don't need their permission. You just need to start. I started with nothing but a silver pendant and a dream. Look where it got me. Now go get yours.